Hey guys, how is everybody doing now? This is the first video to the conclusion to the Nightmare on Elm Street review series. Tomorrow or today, whenever you're watching this video, I will have my video up of ranking the versions of Freddy's. I'll get into more detail when that video goes live. But today, we are ranking all 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies from worst to best. Now, let's make this clear. This is my ranking. These are my own personal opinions. Don't yell at me that I should go kill myself or my mother should have never gave birth to me. No insults like that. How about you just don't give me all your pain in the comments, and how about you just give me your personal ranking in the comments below if you've seen all the movies, of course. But with that being said, let's get on with it. Without question, the worst Nightmare on Elm Street movie of this franchise, when coming in at number 9, is Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. This movie is fucking boring as shit. I do not care for this movie. The only thing I can really remember about this movie that I like is the whole Carlos death where Freddy's like rubbing his fingers against like the little chalkboard and everything. That's a really cool death, but at the same time it's really goofy. Other than that, this movie is boring. It's basically a Looney Tunes cartoon featuring Freddy Krueger. And Freddy Krueger throughout the entire movie is just a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon. So you're gonna take one of the most popular horror icons, put this movie out in Variety, saying that this is the final Nightmare on Elm Street movie, we're gonna finally kill off Freddy Krueger, and then you're just gonna show us that he's a fucking cartoon and everything? No. The way I would have done this movie was actually one of the drafts for this movie. The way I would have loved to see this movie be if this was the final Nightmare on Elm Street movie, I would have loved to see where this movie had Alice from Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5 and Jacob, her son from Nightmare on Elm Street 5, come to forces together. They're just kind of living like with their lives basically. Then all of a sudden Jacob starts having nightmares about Freddy Krueger and everything, and so Alice tells Jacob about everything, and then Jacob and Alice finally team up together to take down Jacob. But when I mean that was one of the drafts is what Jacob as an adult was going to track down Freddy and kill him. I would have loved to see that version of Freddy's Dead, to see that being the concluding chapter to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. But no, they just put him as a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon with boring as shit characters, and you got this stupid ass sideline going on that Freddy Krueger apparently had a daughter. Like, I don't care, and I don't give a shit how he became the way he is, where these weird, like, fish sperm things said, like, oh, you want to be a dream team? And he goes, yeah, sure, and then they just go into him, and then they just gave him this power. No. I don't give a shit how he got his powers, and that is the worst way to tell this story. And I'm glad they never bring it up in Freddy versus Jason. Hell, that's a thing that I love, that I actually like about the remake. I don't bring that shit up. Who came up with that idea? Sperm fish demon, dream demon things? Who came up with that? Like, who came up with that? Coming in at number 8, just barely, is Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Look, I don't hate this movie, but I really don't care for this movie. I don't care for any of the characters, really. They're all pretty boring in a way. And the only thing that I really love about this movie are the kills, like especially Dan's death, where like parts of the motorcycle are going into him and he becomes like this weird hulking machine monster thing and everything. Like that death is pretty cool. I like the whole dinner scene where Freddy's just feeding the chick her like her organs and stuff, and like the comic book dude's death where he becomes like paper and stuff, and he starts, and then Freddy like turns him into confetti and all that. I love that stuff, but I feel the Dream Child aspect is fine, I guess. It's interesting and something new for this franchise, but they didn't really pull it off very well, and they never really hit the mark on it. They kind of turned it into some kind of gag. They could have used that utilization better, where Alice is pregnant and the baby is dreaming, and that's the way Freddy Krueger came back. That's a great concept for Nightmare on Elm Street, but they barely use it, and it's barely in the movie. Like, I get it, but at the same time, like I want to see that continue. But no, we're just gonna throw this weird kid named Jacob. Apparently, that's Alice's daughter, and just focus on that instead of that the that the baby is dreaming and everything. And get the fuck out of here what Freddy Krueger looks like. What is that supposed to be? That is not Freddy. That is one of the worst looking Freddy Kruegers out there. I prefer the look of like Freddy's dead. Like that Freddy Krueger, he's stupid as fuck, but at least he looks like Freddy. This Freddy, he does not look like Freddy. I'm just gonna say it. He doesn't look like Freddy. But I don't hate this movie. If I was forced to rewatch it, I wouldn't hate it, but I would be bored out of my mind and I would be in agony. Like, this movie is not funny. Stop it. But I do like seeing Alice return. I feel she's an okay addition to this franchise, and I'm glad that she returned and got a second movie. Number 7 is a movie that just pains me how bad it is, and that is the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Look, I've had all the faith in the world for this remake. Ever since I heard that this movie was a thing, that they ever remade it. I'm not a big fan of remakes. I've said that before, and I even said it in my review that I don't care for remakes. Remakes to me are pointless, they shouldn't exist, and to me, this had all the standards to do it. Platinum Dunes, they don't have the best track record, but they do good with horror movie remakes. Like Friday 13th, I actually really enjoy the remake. That's one of the best Friday 13th movies out there, and I really like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. That's my second favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And I also really like its prequel. And to be honest, that's probably the last good one that was made, really. But this movie had so much going for it, but they completely waste it. To me, the only thing that this movie has going for it is Jackie Earle Haley in the role as Freddy Krueger. He does perfect in the role. If anyone was going to replace Robert Englund, they chose a wise choice with Jackie Earle Haley. He's a great actor, and I felt that he pulled off the role. But they barely use him, and they give him a horrible script and god awful makeup. That is not what Freddy Krueger is supposed to look like. At least the Dream Child got a little bit of him right, but he's just like completely CGI, like just completely. And I just don't care for what they try here. I don't, I've said this before. I'm a guy that roots for the killers and murderers in horror movies. I know that's really weird, but it's hard for me to root for a killer who's a child diddler. You know. And I hate that whole subplot to where Nancy and Quentin are trying to figure out was Freddy innocent? Was he guilty? Did he actually do these things, or did we lie, or were we just young and we didn't understand what he was doing? Like, dude, it's Freddy Krueger. We had 8 other movies with him before this movie, and he was an evil motherfucker. He killed kids, okay? And in this movie, he's supposed to be a child diddler. Don't focus on that. And then the lame twist in this movie is that, oh, no, he did all that shit. He's a fucked up person. Yeah, we know that since 1984. We know that he's fucked up. Okay, it just I hate that they hold that focus on that. I really wanted to love this Freddy. For years, I said, "Oh, that Freddy's not that bad," and then over the years, I'm like, "Dude, get him off the screen." The only thing that would ever get me to rewatch this movie is Jackie Earle Haley in the role, and I also really like how they explore micro naps in this movie. But this movie had so much potential. Even trying to recreate certain scenes, like from the original, like the whole spandex scene from the original, which probably only cost them like $10. But in this movie, they just use complete CGI. Like it looks like shit. Like it's that bad. Like in the original, they only spend like $10 just for that one shot, and that's one of my favorite images and shots from the original movie. I remember seeing marketing about that movie. When I bought a DVD of this movie, that was only on the back, and I didn't even watch the movie. I just looked at it, I'm like, holy shit, that looks cool. I'm like, oh, I'm like, when I first watched this remake, I'm like, oh, I'm excited to see how they recreate that, and I go, and then you got like scenes like trying to recreate Tina's death. They did that very simple in the original movie. They just had like a spinning room and they just glued everything down and they would just spin the room to make her look like she's going along the wall. But no, in this movie they use wire work. And the sound effects in that scene are funny and stupid. This movie had so much potential going for it. This movie could have been up there with the Mount Rushmore of best horror movie remakes out there, but no. This could have been up there with John Carpenter's The Thing. This could have been up there with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. But it doesn't. This movie has so many issues, especially Rudy Mara's performance as Nancy. We don't talk about her. We do not talk about Rudy Mara. It's Nancy Thompson. Oh, sorry, Nancy Holbrook. Why is everybody else's name in this movie different? But they keep Nancy's name, but they just change the last name. If you're gonna change her last name, make her a whole different character. I really wish they did like a what if scenario. Maybe get like a scene, maybe get like a thing where we think that Nancy Holbrook, who's played by the whatever the chick's name, I forget her name already. Make it look like she's the main character, but do like a what if scenario, and that Chris is actually the main character. I would have preferred that. Her actress isn't a great actress, but she's better than Rooney Mara in this movie. And that, no, again, this movie has so much potential, but it just does not hit the mark. Now, from here on out, I can watch all of these movies. I can actually rewatch all these movies and be like, okay, that was pretty good. I wouldn't I wouldn't really care to rewatch it, but if I was forced to, I wouldn't mind. So coming in at number 6 is Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Why is it called Freddy's Revenge, by the way? There's really nothing going on in this movie. Really, this entire movie is just random shit happening in the real world. A person dies, and then it just goes to Jesse in a dream. And not to be derogatory, but this movie is very gay. This is in the top 100 gayest horror movies of all time. I showed it in my video, and I showed a picture of it showing the top 100 gayest horror movies ever made, and that was number 2, which is saying a lot. And apparently, the screenwriter of this movie said that he never intended it to be gay. Then why did you write that whole weird fucking bedroom dance scene, dude? Yeah, that's not gay at all. And it also doesn't really help that the guy who plays Jesse in this movie is actually gay in real life, but he didn't come out and say it at the time. And this movie actually got him to quit acting for a while because they felt that that the filmmakers of this movie were trying to force him to come out as gay, and they for some reason he thought that they knew that and all that. It's weird, really. But I just don't care for this movie. Jesse, he's an okay character. I can enjoy him for what they give me of him, but I just don't care to rewatch it. I do like this Freddy. He's one of the scariest Freddys out there, but there's really nothing going on except just random shit in the real world and then just 10 to 15 minutes of dream stuff. But it does have a pretty cool one-liner, like the whole brain thing where he's like, "You've got the body, I've got the brain," and just like rips off like some of his skin to show his brain. That's a really cool scene. But maybe it comes from pure nostalgic why I can enjoy this movie a little bit, but compared to the movies above it, this movie is pretty weak. Coming in at number 5 is Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Not really Dream Master, really. I really enjoyed this movie. It's fun. I do like the Alice character. I thought if they were ever going to replace her from Nancy or Christian from the other movies, they could have done worse, and I really enjoy her character. But I just hate how they just kill off the Dream Warriors in like the first 25, 30 minutes of this movie. They were some of my favorite characters of this franchise, and still are. I love Kincaid. I fucking love Kincaid. But they just kill them off. And if you're gonna kill them off in the end. Come on, like, Jesus. Go watch my review where I went into depth about what I originally had to how they could die but still be in the movie a lot more. But this movie is just where the comedy of this series really just went up. This is where they saw the comedy aspects of Dream Warriors like, oh, that's great, but let's just make that a whole entire movie. And Freddy Krueger's not even scary in this movie. He's just more goofy in this entire movie. Like he's just spitting out one-liners here and there. Look, I can enjoy this movie. I really enjoy it. It's a fun film. And for it being a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, it's not bad. And probably when you think about it, it was the last great one that was made, really. Well, actually, that's a lie. Never mind. Scratch that. I just like remember like, oh wait, I got other movies talking about it. But yeah, I enjoy The Dream Master. It's not a bad movie, but I wouldn't care to rewatch it. And if I was forced to, it's not bad. In at number 4 is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, a lot of people have this movie a lot higher, which I'm glad that you love this movie, but this movie's never really hit the mark for me. I do like this movie, but every time I'm in a Nightmare on Elm Street mood, I never really want to put this movie on, really. I come to this franchise for a Freddy movie. Freddy Krueger is probably the only reason that we'll come to this franchise. I would rather watch a Freddy Krueger movie than some entity that's able to take the appearance of Freddy Krueger and enter our world. That's not Freddy Krueger. I do think this Freddy Krueger looks awesome. This is probably the best looking Freddy Krueger, especially his claw, where it's like part of his like hand and his veins and muscles and stuff and bones. Like that's the coolest looking glove out of all of them, really. But other than that, well, actually, I love seeing Wes Craven returning to direct and write this franchise. He has desperately been missing since Dream Warriors. I love seeing Heather Langenkamp come back to the franchise, playing herself, Nancy, who the fuck knows, but she gives her best performance in this franchise in this movie. But again, I would rather be watching a Freddy Krueger movie than some Entity movie. I really enjoy this movie. It's actually really good, but it's never been one of my favorite movies or one of my favorite horror movies, nor has it really been one of my favorite nightmare movies. It's high. Let me assure you, it's high up on my list. But again, I would just rather watch a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And really, this was the last like really good one that was made. I'll talk about the one right above it, but to me, this is where Freddy was great. And this, if they just made this part of the original Nightmare movies, maybe this would be a lot higher. But I do like the meta side to it. I do really enjoy that. This was 2 years before Scream, but maybe that's why it wasn't received well, because before Scream we didn't care for this, and it's also really confusing when you really watch it. Like, I don't know, it's kind of confusing just to really talk about it here. But I do enjoy Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It's a fun film. I do like rewatching it, but again, I'd rather watch a Freddy movie than an entity taking the form of Freddy Krueger. Coming in at number three, might be controversial pick, but I love this movie, and that is Freddy vs. Jason. I love Freddy vs. Jason. I honestly do love it. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It's one of my favorite movies just in general. I love Freddy vs. Jason. This is a movie where I have pure nostalgia comes in really. Where I remember my mom took me over to her friend's house. I was dying to watch this movie for years, and then when I finally saw it there, I was like, I need to watch this. I'm so excited. And they're like, oh yeah, you can keep that. And my mom was like, "Oh, let's wait till tomorrow to watch." And I was like, "No, mom, I need to watch this now." And I talked about the whole story in my review. Go watch that. Go watch it. I'll wait. There you go. There you go. Thank you. And I love Freddy vs. Jason. To me, where the flaws come in is Jason. I love Jason Voorhees. He's one of my favorite horror movie icons. I'm pretty sure every horror movie fan can say that. But he's not very good in this movie. Like Ken Kirschner, to me, he works better as a stuntman than he does a actor. I don't think his performance is bad as the character, but it's his slow movement. We see his eyes too much. I do like the look of this Jason. I do think it's pretty cool. But please get out of here with Jason being afraid of water. That is completely bullshit, and we all know it, by the way. And I really enjoy this movie. To me, this is where they got everything right about Nightmare on Elm Street. When I do my ranking for Friday the 13th, you might see this lower, but again, it's because of that they just ruined Jason. But this is where the Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger aspects come in, is why it's so high, is because they get everything right with Freddy Krueger. They get everything right with him, and this really was the best way to tell this story. Freddy has lost his powers. Nobody fears Freddy anymore. Nobody even knows who Freddy is anymore. And so he awakes Jason from hell to go to Springwood and bring some fear into the kids so he can come back and kill again. But then Jason gets a little machete happy, and Freddy does not like that, so he decides to put him to sleep and try to kill him. And that's where the horror begins. That is the best way to tell this story. I do agree with the characters, but let's be honest. We're not here for characters. We're here to see two classic horror icons from the 80s to fucking butcher each other and cut each other up and just fucking annihilate each other. That is what we're here for. If you're here for characters, wrong movie, bud. I love Freddy vs. Jason. I'll never get the hate for this film. I've always loved this film. And if you have issues with the characters, just remember, this is not a movie about characters. It's about Freddy and Jason fucking each other up. Okay. Top two. Now this was really hard for me. I've never in my life, when it comes to a ranking video, I struggled determining my favorite of a franchise. Where you ask me today, you ask me tomorrow. It might be this or that. But as of right now, as of recording this video, until possibly we get another theatrically released Nightmare movie, as of right now, my number two is the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I adore this movie. This is one of the best horror movies ever made. It's one of my favorite horror movies ever made. It's one of my favorite movies ever made. It's one of the best movies, period. I love how Wes Craven came up with this story about a dream demon able to enter your dreams, and that if you die in your dream, you die for real life, and that you can't escape them because eventually you do have to fall asleep. So you're gonna die, and that's a very scary concept. I love the characters. I love Nancy Thompson. I love the characters. The Wes Craven has always been great about writing characters. I love Freddy Krueger. This was the birth of an icon. This what gave birth to Freddy Krueger. And if you're a Johnny Depp fan, ooh, who isn't? Thanks Amber Heard for ruining his career. This movie gave us Johnny Depp. This was his first movie. If you don't believe me, look it up, bitch. Yeah, he didn't begin his career with a fucking pirate. I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I love what how Wes Craven makes this movie. I feel that this movie ages perfectly, except for some effects. I love the death scenes in this movie, how Freddy Krueger makes it look like it was a suicide. I love this fucking movie. It is one of my favorite films ever made, and the only thing that keeps it from number one is that I hate that ending. I do not understand why Bob Shea from New Line Cinema, the co-leader of it now, well, always was, that he wanted an ending that was complete bullshit, where we got that great final sequence with Nancy and Freddy, where Nancy basically says, fuck you, dude, I'm not scared of you anymore, I want my friends, I take everything that I gave to you, and then he just goes away. That's the perfect way you could have ended that movie, the perfect way. But then Bob Shaye's like, oh no, this movie might make a lot of money, so can you, like, redo that ending with that stupid blow-up doll and shit so I can make more movie? So you remember that cool-ass battle that those two had and that great ending that would have been? Well, fuck you. I gotta make more movies. Other than that, it's a fantastic film. I love A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's one of my favorite films ever made, and it's a movie that I constantly rewatch. This was one of those horror movies where I basically watched it every single fucking day until I got tired from it for like a year or two, and then I kind of set it aside, and then I was like, oh yeah, I love Nightmare on Elm Street. Put that shit back on. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing again. You could actually ask my mom. I drove my mom crazy rewatching this movie so much. This is a this is a movie that I constantly rewatch. This is a movie that I have to watch every year now, and it's a movie that I actually put on every Halloween. It gets me into the spooky season. If I have not sold you enough on the original Nightmare on Elm Street, what are you doing? It's one of the best movies ever made. And my mom actually says that it's her favorite horror movie for a good fucking reason too, and I wouldn't argue with you. I love the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I just fucking hate that ending. But surprisingly, this movie has come over the first movie. My number one is Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. This is how you do a fucking sequel. This is the best horror movie sequel out there. This is my second favorite horror movie of all time now. The more I rewatch this movie, the more I think about it. This is, in fact, my second favorite horror movie. I've always debated what my second favorite horror movie is. I know what my favorite horror movie is of all time, but I've never knew what it was. It's always gone back and forth with The Shining, fucking Silence of the Lambs, the original Halloween, Orphan, where I'm like, oh, those movies are great. All of those movies are contended for my number two. But after rewatching it now, this is my second favorite horror movie of all time. I love A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. This movie has the best characters. This movie gets Freddy right, where they got that perfect blend of scary Freddy and funny Freddy. I love the hospital setting. I love how how Freddy goes back and makes all the deaths look like suicides. Basically, this entire movie is flawless. I did say that I felt that killing off Nancy and John Dugan were kind of mistakes, and I was really mixed on it, but at the same time, I understood that they wanted to carry on those characters. But over time, I've come to, like, basically push that aside, like, oh, that doesn't even matter. This movie's awesome. When you just put that aside, I actually really liked Nancy's fate in this movie. John Saxon, not so much because we barely got to see him, but that I really wish he got done justice more. But I love the original Nightmare on Elm Street. It is, well, not the original. Yeah, I do love the original, but I love Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. It is a perfect sequel. It's my favorite horror movie sequel of all time. It is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it is my number one Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my ranking of all nine Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And it's a shame that we only have nine. And because of that shitty fucking remake, which I still contend is the worst remake of all time, because of that movie, we have never seen Freddy Krueger on the big screen, ever. There have been some reports that apparently another film has been in development that Blumhouse apparently got the rights, or New Line Cinema got the rights again. We'll never know. We will see what the future holds for this franchise, but as of right now, my ranking of all nine Nightmare on Elm Street movies, this is it. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave me your ranking in the comments below. Please do not send me death threats or death threats to my mother or my father. I shouldn't be sexist. But thank you all so much for watching. Please share me your ranking in the comments below. Look out tomorrow or today, again, whenever you're watching this, for my ranking of the versions of Freddy Krueger. Again, I will get into more depths about that when I make that video, but thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, like it. Please share this video as well, and if you love this video, please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you will get notified for my latest videos. But of course, until my next video, I'll see you next time.